I would like to begin just thanking my family for really helping to get this presentation together. I'd like to thank my friends at the CRC for helping out. If anybody has any questions, so the line will be muted. They can feel free to send their questions in through the chat, and those questions then will be delivered to me. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to the CRC laboratory over here. This is, you can call it this is a place where we start to develop CRC policies. It begins over here, together with, have some friends who help me out, Fishbane, Rabbi Yisroel. Then we discuss matters over together with Rabbi Isaac, Rabbi Cohen. Eventually we talk to Rabbi Reese about things very often, and that's how we develop policies. So I just want to give us a little background. The hallmark of every Torah observant Jew is to keep Shabbos and to keep kashrus. That's how we. That's what a Torah observant Jew does. Ask somebody, is they Torah observant? The question is, are they Shomer Shabbos? Do they keep Shabbos? Do they keep kosher? Keeping kosher in today's time is relatively easy. You go to a store, you look for a symbol. It doesn't have a CRC on it, doesn't have an OU, an OK, a reliable certification, and you knew that you're in good hands. People took care to make sure that you're receiving kosher food. However, when it comes to produce, fruits and vegetables, so here, very often the matter is in the consumer's hands. The fruit and vegetables are certainly kosher, but the bugs inside aren't. And so now it becomes the consumer's obligation and responsibility to remove those bugs. Now, if we go back, you know, people are talking about bugs and produce. Who ever heard of bugs and produce? I was growing up. We ate broccoli, cauliflower. We lived in a religious home. We kept kosher. What are you telling me that there's issues with bugs and produce? Just going back in history, if we go back to Europe, so we see indeed that if you look in the Sfarim, they talk about how there were all kinds of infestation in foods. The Chachmas Adam gives a list. He talks about cherries from this country, this fruit from that country, berries from over here, and he writes all leafy produce is filled with bugs, and either one shouldn't eat it or they have to check it very, very carefully before eating it. So the idea of bugs and produce has been around for the ages. Now, in the earlier years in America, we had a reprieve because we had very effective pesticides known as DDT, and DDT was very effective in getting rid of the bugs in the produce. And it could very well be that the broccoli and the lettuces and the things that we ate as children really didn't have bugs in it. However, DDT became banned. It was killing out the bird population. They banned it. And ever since then, we're using weaker pesticides today, and the bugs are continuing to infest in the produce that we eat. Now, because of that, we have to do our due diligence in getting rid of the bugs. Now, just to, to think about bugs in produce, it looks like a small little bug. It's how bad could it really be? So the Torah actually gives us 4 to 6 lavin, 4 to 6 negative commandments in the Torah not to eat bugs, depending on what kind of insect it is. If it's an insect that's in the water, or it's an insect that swims, that walks on dry land, is it an insect that flies? It would vary whether it's 4, 5, or 6 averos in the Torah for eating one single bug. The Torah tells us, when it comes to the avera of eating bugs, the pasuk says, "V'nitzmeisem bam," and Chazal tell us, "Al tikri v'nitzmeisem el v'nitamtem." That when we eat bugs, it brings, and all non-kosher foods, it brings us timtum halev. It makes our hearts closed from coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It makes us, we see Nebuch children who go off the derech. It could come from eating non-kosher foods, including insects, including bugs. The Sefer Reishis Chachma tells us that specifically when eating bugs, so it brings Rachmana litzlan terrible illnesses upon people. So we certainly have to do our due diligence in making sure that we're not having any bugs in the produce that we eat. Now, our objective tonight is not to try to convince you not to eat healthy foods, to get rid of your salads, to get rid of your lettuce, and maybe start a diet of potato chips and ash. That's not what we're here to do. But rather, we want to tell you how to eat your healthy food in the proper way, following the halakha. We want to give you a better understanding of the topic of tailaim, of bugs in your produce, and perhaps to give you an appreciation on what goes on here at the CRC, and to show you how you could really help yourself and really help all the other kosher consumers around as well. So first, let's discuss some rules about bugs in produce. Now, do we have to check everything we eat? If I go to a store and I buy an apple, I buy an orange, I buy potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, do I have to start checking them for bugs before I eat it? No. So there is a rule that something which is a miyat she'enei matzli. A miyat she'enei matzli means something where it's very uncommon for there to be a bug found in that item, so we don't have to check for it. If there ended up being a bug, you didn't get an aveira because you had no obligation to check. So, for example, a potato. Sometimes, my son was checking a potato. He was peeling a potato a few months ago, and out came a worm. A worm came out from the potato. There you can see it on the screen. The worm comes out. Now, that was, I guess Hashem saved us from eating that worm. I don't know how he found that, but he was peeling it. He asked, Abba, is that a worm? And indeed, it was crawling out. There was a worm coming out of the potato. Now, that doesn't mean that if we would have eaten the potato without checking for the worm, we wouldn't have been violating any kind of an isser in the Torah, because we weren't expected to check a potato for worms. Potatoes don't usually come with worms in it. So one would not have to check it. However, when it comes to something which is at the level of a miyat hamatzli, that means it is somewhat common. It is somewhat common to have bugs in that produce. Then it becomes an obligation, at least with the Rabbanan, to check that produce for bugs before eating it. So now the question becomes, so what's called common? What's called uncommon? Is it something which is common to have bugs? What is called common? So that's really the million-dollar question. What's considered common enough that you have to go ahead now and I have to start checking and scrutinizing this vegetable, this fruit, to make sure that there are no bugs on it? So here at the CRC, we go with the view of the Mishkanais Yaakov. The Mishkanais Yaakov held that if it's 10% of having, there's a 10% chance of finding a bug, so then you would have to go ahead and you would have to check. And now 10% of what? 10% of what? Is it 1 out of every 10 heads of lettuce? Is it 1 out of every 10 cartons of blueberries that has a bug? That would make it a miyat hamatzli. So some may understand like that. But here at the CRC, we follow the view that it's 10% of servings of that produce. So we have to figure out, when it comes to whatever produce or fruits and vegetables that we're interested in eating, so how much of that is a serving? Is it a half an ounce? Is it a half a cup? What is a serving? And we have ways of figuring that out. We look online, we ask around, figuring out the average person, how much do they eat of that food, and that will determine what the serving of that food is. Then we go ahead and we have to start doing our research over here and seeing how often do bugs come up in that food. Are we finding one bug in every 10 ounces? Or what is the percentage? What is the percentage of that food that we're finding bugs in? If we determine after extensive research that indeed there are bugs in those produce, enough that would render it a miyat hamatzli, that would be common enough to find bugs. It's common 1 out of every 10 times, 1 out of every 10 servings, we do indeed find bugs. So that would make it an obligation upon the consumer to go ahead and to check the produce before eating it. Now, we mentioned potatoes and apples. Those certainly, when you buy it in a store, that's not going to be considered to be a miyat hamatzli. One is not obligated to check their apple before they eat it when they buy it from a fruit store. However, much of the leafy things that we have today, lettuce, all kinds of lettuces and herbs that we find today, that certainly would be, at least in the category of a miyad hamatzah. It means it's something which regularly it's common that we find bugs in that kind of a produce, that when we're eating lettuce, at least 1 out of every 10 servings will be having a bug, and therefore one has an obligation to go ahead and to check the lettuce before eating it. Now, before we tell you how to check the lettuce, so we have to prepare you. In lettuce, very often we will find you'll find larger bugs. You can find flies and larger bugs that will appear in the lettuce. Here's one example. If you look at the top, that's a toothpick that's pointing out to the bug. That's a larger kind of a insect that's found in lettuce. But that's not really the one that's most common in the lettuce that we're buying from a store. The most common bugs that we're finding in stores are really going to be smaller bugs, bugs that come up in the fields. They're called thrips and aphids. Those are the bugs, as you see in the picture, these are much smaller bugs. They are enlarged to make it easier for you to see it, but these are the bugs that we're typically going to be finding in lettuce. There's an aphid. It's a green bug. You can see it's two antennae, the little two black eyes in the top. It's the thrips and the aphid. There's another aphid. It's a little bit of a darker green aphid. It's these aphids and thrips are the ones that are going to be most common. We could find other things. There are some spiders that could be found in produce, and that's what we're going to be looking for. How do we find these bugs? Well, you certainly could do the way we did in the olden days. You take a leaf, you hold it up to the sunlight, and you start analyzing it, every part of the leaf. You can hold it up to a strong light as well, and analyzing it, checking to make sure you don't have any of these bugs on your leaf. Today, at least at the CRC, we recommend a different method for checking produce. Now, the reason is because when we're looking at leaves, so it becomes hard. You have to keep your head up, holding it high up to the sun. You start getting a stiff neck. It also, you're scrutinizing and analyzing every part of the leaf, and it gets tiresome, especially if you're doing a lot of leaves. It becomes tiresome to the eye to see every spot, and you end up going a little bit quicker. It becomes difficult. So the way we do it today is we have a method called the thrip cloth method. The thrip cloth method, the reason why it's called a thrip cloth is after the name of the most common insect found in lettuce, which is the thrip. And that's why it's called a thrip cloth. This is a cloth which is made out of, it's a very, very fine material. The only thing that will go through it really is water. Any possible bug will be caught by this cloth. So the first step we do is we're going to wash the lettuce. I'm not going to go. I'm just going to show you basically how it's done. If you want to see it in more detail, we have it online at the CRC on our website. Basically, we're going to take the lettuce. We're going to cut it put them into separate leaves, or if it's herbs that you're doing, we'll put the herbs into here, and we're going to fill it up with water and soap. If you're using a soap, we like to use a non-toxic variety. It's scent-free, fragrance-free. It's not going to kill anybody. You put it into this water, put water in, put leaves in, and you want to agitate. Agitate everything really well. The key is agitation. Basically, you're like a washing machine at this point. A washing machine, you have dirty clothing. How do you get it clean? You put detergent and you agitate it. That's how you get it clean. So your lettuce at this point is basically dirty clothing. So you're going to put your lettuce into the
Rabbi Langer.
bowl. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Historically, people have thought you could use salt to clean lettuce. Is that recommended to use salt?
Okay, so that's a very good point. In days of old, people used salt. Some use vinegar. They are somewhat effective. However, they're not nearly effective as soap. This was introduced by Rabbi Yisroel from Rabbi Yisroel, that soap is something which experiments have shown helps get rid of the bugs. I mean, salt might be helpful in killing the bugs, but we're not allowed to eat dead bugs either. And so therefore, soap has the ability to help dislodge and to remove the bug. Just like when you're doing your dirty laundry, you don't do it with salt, you're doing it with soap, with detergent, because it helps get the bugs off. So the bugs that are caked on to the leaves, to the lettuce, it'll help slip it out, and it'll help release the bug off the leaf. Okay, we're going to go ahead and then we're going to fill this up with water, soap, leaves, and you're going to agitate. Good agitation. Then we want to do is we're going to remove the leaves. When you remove the leaves are slippery, and gravity will help pull the bugs out. And then we would typically, especially this time of the year, not even bother to check the lettuce quite yet because we know there are probably still bugs left. So we're going to simply spill the water out and start again. Put the leaves back in, put the soap in, put the water in, and again, good agitation. Pull the leaves out, and then we're going to spill the water down the drain. Now we're at round 3. There's a good chance that perhaps now, if the lettuce is not too bad, so now at this point, the lettuce might be ready to be eaten. So we're going to simply put the leaves back in a third time with soap, water, again, agitate, pull the leaves out, and now we're going to want to check this water. How are we going to check the water?
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
How much soap are you supposed to put in? Like a lot?
So we don't have a specific amount of soap. It really depends on the size of the bowl that you're using. But we want there to be, if you have to feel it until it's a little slippery. Just feel the water and the leaves. If it feels a bit slippery, don't overdo it. You're going to put too much soap in, you'll be filled with all kinds of bubbles and suds. What you're going to do is you're going to just feel it till it's slightly slippery. At that point, it's going to be enough to use. Okay, so at that point, you also want to make sure, once you mentioned that, we could also want to make sure that the water level is going to be well above the lettuce. You want to have enough room to agitate. If you're going to overcrowd the bowl, there's really not room to agitate it and to move it around, the bugs are not going to have room to escape. Okay, then we're going to take this water, that's soapy water, and you're going to take 2 strainers. These are nice metal strainers. You get cheap ones from a dollar store for 99 cents. I happen to like these a little better. They're wider, easier to use. You sandwich the cloth in between the 2 strainers. By doing so, you're holding the cloth firmly in place. And the top strainer will catch any bigger pieces of dirt or leaves that we're not interested in getting onto our cloth. We're going to then take the bowl of soapy water. Again, we took out the leaves. Leaves are out. All what's left here is soapy water with maybe a potential bug. We're now going to pour the water into the 2 strainers. Now, very often you'll have some suds in the way. Not a big deal. You have a sprayer. You just spray the suds. Use warm water. It works quickly. Works quicker. Takes around 10, 15 seconds. And then we're going to take the cloth over to a light, a nice bright light, and we're going to examine it very carefully. When examining the cloth, you like to use a sprayer, because if you're going to start fingering the cloth, is that a bug, you end up squashing the bugs. The bugs are very small, like we mentioned. If you want to look at it, we recommend using a sprayer. You spray it, moves the bug around into different positions, and then you can get a better look at the bug without actually squashing it or crushing it. It helps you get a better look. Now, I will tell you that the bugs are small. Is everybody able to check? I don't know that everybody's able to check. It really depends on a person's eyesight. Some people have very poor eyesight from close. The bigger bugs that we saw before, those you'll probably be able to see. But some of the thrips and the aphids, the smaller ones, those might be more difficult for some of us to see. I'll just mention an interesting story. When I started a couple of years ago checking, looking for bugs in produce. So I had a nephew who called me up and asked me, how do you know you see well? I said, I see well. How do you know you see well? So he said, well, you know what? Take out a $20 bill. Take out a $20 bill and see if you see these very small numbers on the $20 bill. If you look on a $20 bill, here we're going to have you right next to the bottom left corner, in the bottom left corner by the number 20, the bottom left 20. So there are some letters over there. There's some letters over there. Here it's old, now it's enlarged. It says over there, the United States of America, 20 USA, 20 USA. So if any of you at home happen to have a $20 bill on you, take it out. Take a look to see if you could see those letters. I took out the $20 bill. I couldn't see a thing. I couldn't see a thing on the bill. I said, what are you talking about? There's nothing on my $20 bill. I don't see anything over here. So he said, you see well. I said, I do see well. But then I went ahead and I took off my glasses. I took off my glasses the way I would look at fine print, and I put my nose right up to the USA, 20 USA, and I said, oh, you're right. There are words over there. Interestingly, my teenage children, they're able to see it right away. So you're younger, you know, you have an advantage over there because you're able to see things that are smaller. But that's just at least to look at, you know, if you're farsighted, it's not going to help to take off your glasses. There you're going to want to leave your glasses on. If you're nearsighted, sometimes it pays to take your glasses off, get a really close-up look, and, you know, you'll be able to see the bugs in a better way. It's a good idea, if you don't have experience, to really have somebody at least show you what the bugs look like. And sometimes they get calls from people. They say, I check my letters, I check my Roman letters, I use the strip cloth. I don't see any bugs. You know, this time of the year, if you're not finding bugs in your Roman lettuce, then you don't know what bugs look like. Because again, it's not the bigger flies; these are smaller flies. You don't need to use these magnifying glasses. You know, it's just things that we could see with our eyes. We don't use microscopes and magnifying. I have never used a magnifying glass in any checking for the produce. These are all things that we're able to see with our own eyes.
Is it just dish soap, or what's with vegetable washes? Those are also acceptable?
Okay, so vegetable washes really are just diluted soap. Vegetable washes are acceptable when it comes to lettuce. When it comes to certain things, let's say, for example, strawberries, so there we'll talk about a little later. Strawberries, we do want you to use a soap. It's something which is more concentrated and something where the bugs are really, really tugging in. So there we want to have a more slipperier solution, so we would recommend for that to use the soap. Now, when we say vegetable washes, I just want to warn you, there are two types of vegetable washes. There are vegetable washes that don't really do a thing as far as bugs are concerned. Vegetable washes, all they do is they kill the bacteria in the produce. It's not going to really assist you in any way in terms of getting rid of bugs. So if you're going to be using a vegetable wash, you're going to want to make sure that it's a vegetable wash that's going to make things slippery in order to remove them from the produce.
And I want to point out that they should be kosher certified as well, the vegetable washes.
Yes. Okay. Now, it's not just lettuce that we have to be concerned for. We are doing research into all kinds of different produce to find out, is it mir hamatzi? So, you look at different guides. People have different rules. Does it have to be checked? Doesn't it have to be checked? So, for example, dates. Dates is something that one of the things that we're always looking into. There's a worm that's found in a date, Tunisian dates, medjool dates. Now, it does seem that depending on the kind of a date, it will dictate how many bugs you find in it. Usually, in the higher quality medjool dates, very seldom do we find the worm. You will find one here and there, but it's very uncommon to find it. We don't think it's a mir hamatzi. We don't think it's common enough that the consumer is required, is obligated al pi halakha to look for it. Now, of course, if you want to be extra strict, you're more than welcome to do so, but we don't feel that those dates are one is required. Now, there are some cheaper varieties, Tunisian dates, some other kinds of dates that we do find more worms, and we are working on it, trying to see if they do come into this category of a mir hamatzi. Is it something that one is obligated to actually check for before eating? The way to check for a date, of course, is simply just to open up the date and look inside, see if you see the worms. They're not so difficult to see. one could see it. A lot of times you'll find in those dates that have a worm, you'll find like little speckles in there. You'll see a little bit, looks a little bit funny on the inside. They're not too difficult to find. Other foods that we sometimes check into is you have pistachio nuts. In pistachio nuts also you'll find worms. There's a worm that's circled over there that's found in a pistachio nut. There's another, these are worms. It's another one that got burrowed. It was burrowed. See, it's a dark brown. It's burrowed into the nut. How common are they? We don't think at this point that they're common enough that the consumer is required to check. Here and there you can find a more infested batch, but by and large, we don't think that at this point that they're common enough that the consumer is obligated to check all their nuts before they eat it. At least here in America. Of course, in other places, in other countries, we don't really know. You see in Eretz Yisrael, they're using less pesticides. So I don't really know what's over there. Fresh figs, we do tell people to check a handful of them to make sure it's not an infested batch. Dried figs do have a lot of bugs in them, all different kinds of bugs. It could be worms and wasps and all different kinds of things that we would recommend that you look before eating. One thing that we started checking into, noticing a higher increase in bugs are blueberries. Blueberries, we've been checking it throughout the year, and they're coming in from Chile and Peru and other places, and we really haven't found too many bugs that would make one required to check. These you have organic blueberries, however, we found different results. Organic blueberries were pretty heavily infested. Interestingly, if you go to a U-pick farm, U-pick farms are also, I went this past summer to a U-pick farm, they're filled with worms. Now, the reason why U-pick farms will have more bugs in it is because since you're picking it and you're eating it right off the bush, they do you the favor of putting on less pesticides. They don't want to poison anybody. And because of that, there are going to be an increase in worms and other kinds of bugs at U-pick farms. At the beginning of the season, we didn't find so many, but as the season went along, it was really very infested. But interestingly, now I was checking into blueberries, ones that were coming in from Mexico, coming in from Florida, other places. So we have been finding an increase in bugs in them. Now, the reason for that is the bugs that we're finding now is really the thrips, baby thrips and thrips. And the reason is because this is the season where thrips are breeding. This is the season that they breed, and therefore there's a thrip that's found in a blueberry. You can see it's a little bit smaller than the thrips that we saw before. They are a little bit smaller, a little bit harder to tell. Now, for blueberries, we found that our policy generally is to take a container of blueberries and simply to rinse them, to rinse it like this. Just to rinse it and to eat it. So we always do is periodically check to make sure that our policy is meeting the standards. It's really getting rid of the bugs the way it needs to be. Now, we started checking a few weeks ago, and we were noticing, my goodness, a container of blueberries, all of a sudden 3, 4 strips coming out, and we watch it again. How do we check it? Well, so the way we check it is, again, we're using the strip cloth. We first rinse it. We use our policy, rinse it. And then we want to see, are there still bugs left? So we do is we take the blueberries, put them into a bowl, put soap and water in, and agitate. Good agitation. Good agitation. Then we're going to go ahead, and we're going to pour the blueberries into the cloth. We're going to take the strip cloth, the same thing that we use to check our lettuce, and let's see, are there bugs left? So we'll pour the blueberries through all the soapy water in the blueberries, and then we're going to take out the cloth and again examine it on the light. If we're finding a significant amount of bugs after going through the regular rinse, then we know that we have to come up with a stronger method. Now, does that mean that we're going to have to keep to that method all year long? No. We know at this point of the year when there is an increase of thrips in blueberries. For now, for the time being, we're going to have to up our method, and we're going to have to require the consumer to agitate the blueberries the same way that I did. Took the blueberries into a bowl, some soap in, and agitate it. As long as we're not finding more bugs after that wash with the agitation and the soap and the water, then we know that if we don't have a miyat hamatzi of bugs after that, then we don't require the consumer to do any more. So by and large, we found that by putting the soapy water in the blueberries and agitating it and checking the water, so after doing that once, so we didn't find more bugs. So meaning one agitation with soapy water, that was enough, it seemed, to solve the problem of most of the batches. There were several batches that were heavily infested, the same way that we have organic blueberries that are heavily infested, or you pick blueberries that sometimes in some seasons are very heavily infested. So in those situations where it's heavily infested, we warned the consumer that you have to at least wash it 3 times with soapy water until you got it clean, because it wasn't getting clean after just one soapy batch. Over the last couple of weeks, we didn't have so many super infested batches, but they were moderately infested enough that one should have to at least go through one soapy wash with the agitation. The next issue which comes up at this time of the year is checking corn on the cob. Corn on the cob. So, you know, there are bugs in corn on the cob as well. But again, the question is how often, how many bugs are found in corn of the cob to make a problem. There's a picture there of a yellow thrip found in the corn of the cob. You can see its little antennas coming out. And what's amazing is you see that the thrip really takes on the appearance, the same color as the corn. It really blends into the corn, making it very difficult to see. So let's just show you how we check for corn in the cob to know how to figure out policy. The first thing we do is we take the husks off. We take the husks off, and we'll put the husks into a bowl with soapy water, and we're going to check the husks. Are there bugs even present in the corn? Most of the bugs found in corn on the cob will be found in the husks. Now, there are lots of bugs in the husks, and therefore we don't recommend, what some people do is they'll take their corn, they'll wrap it up with aluminum foil and put it onto their grill. We don't recommend doing that because the husks are going to be filled with bugs. So if you're just going to leave your corn whole in the husks and you're going to wrap it up, so then the bugs will be stuck inside, and then one will be eating, chas v'shalom, eating bugs that's on the corn. So we test, and we found that there are many, many bugs in the husks. The next step is that we're going to rinse the corn. And we have found that bugs come off with a mere rinse of the corn, bugs come off. And therefore our policy is that one should remove the husks and rinse the corn before cooking. We want to get rid of all the bugs from the husks, and we want to make sure we get rid of the bugs that come off through a rinse. But now the question is, are there bugs still stuck inside? When I take a bite of my corn, are there going to be bugs? So we test that as well. We're going to, it takes time, what we do is we take the corn, we take the knife, and we put it in between the rows of kernels. And then we pry out the corn to get the entire kernel out. You don't want to just shave it down. If you're shaving it down, you're not getting the entire kernel. We want to make sure there are no bugs throughout the entire kernel. So we take each row and we pry it out. We then take those kernels, and again, we put it into a bowl with soapy water, and we're going to pour that water again through the drip cloth. And if we're finding bugs, then we know we've got problems. Last summer, we went through the summer. There were bugs. There are batches here and there that were somewhat infested. It did not yet meet the miyat hamatzi levels. It was somewhat close. But it was just shy of the miyat hamatzi levels. And therefore, we did not put out any kind of alert, and we allowed people to eat corn in the cob. It is also helpful, by the way, that we do share information with other certifications. We talk to people on an ongoing basis. The one person I just want to mention, I'll mention him by name, is from in Baltimore, Rabbi Tendler, Rabbi Shalom Tendler. He's very extremely helpful. He has years of experience. All the time we communicate and talk, and we share information with each other. We find that amongst all the organizations, the truth is they all just share information with one another. There's a group. It's called the ACO. ACO is actually led by Rabbi Fishbane, where all the different certifications have ways of communicating with each other and helping each other out, which is an unbelievable Kiddush Hashem. Because if you think about it, the various hashkachas are really somewhat in competition with one another, but yet they all help each other out and communicate with each other for the better of Klal Yisrael, in order to enhance the kashrus for all Yidden around the world. There's a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. And so we help each other and we talk to each other about various findings. Now, it could be that in one place there's more bugs, in some places there's less bugs. That wouldn't be a contradiction, but we do help each other out in this way.
Regarding the corn, are there differences between frozen corn, or sometimes you go to a store and there'll be prepackaged fresh corn that they've already done, or is there any differences between those and the bugs?
Well, the only difference is I would assume that the frozen ones that are being found that are still on the cob, those are probably washed. But if there are bugs inside of it, it'll be the same bugs. They'll be whether they're fresh or whether they're frozen. The bugs will still be present. So right now, corn season has started, and we have started the checking process in the corn. Other things that we check, we're looking into.
So for right now, all you have to do is just take off the husk and
wash the corn. Right, correct. Right now, CRC policy is remove the husks from the corn, rinse the corn under the faucet, and then you can cook the corn, and you would be good. If things change, that we see there's higher levels of bugs, there's more infestation, we will certainly alert that to our consumers. Okay, when it comes to scallions, scallions also can have bugs in them. Scallions can appear in the tube area. Scallions can appear in the bulb area. They also can appear in what we call the intersection, the place where the bulb intersects with the tubes. We're constantly checking, want to see where the bugs are found. The CRC today believes that most of the bugs are found in the intersection. We recommend to our establishments to just cut off the intersection and discard it, and check a few of the scallions from a batch to make sure that they're not infested. The way we check scallions to find out how bad they are is really by separating the scallion into three parts. We have the bulb part, which we're going to dice up into little pieces. And we'll take lots of these bulbs and we'll cut them up and wash them in a soapy solution. Then again, pour it through the cloth and see if any bugs come out. Meaning the bugs, if there are bugs that are present, so the bugs are sort of stuck inside. How are they going to get out? But once you cut them open, so now they're exposed to the soapy water, and they would come out and we'll find if they exist. Next, we'll cut the intersections off and do the same thing. Dice up the intersection and find out how many bugs are in the intersection. And then finally, we'll do the same thing for the tubes to find out how many bugs are in the tubes. If you don't feel comfortable yourself at home checking your scallions for bugs, you can really do this foolproof method yourself to get rid of any bugs that may exist in the scallion by simply taking the scallions and dicing it up into small pieces, the way you're going to use it anyway in your tuna salad or in your egg salad, and take those diced up pieces of scallion, put it into a bowl of soapy water, agitate it, and then simply pour it into a strainer. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to rinse off the scallions, and all the soap and all the bugs or potential bugs will just be rinsed out. So right now we tell you that you can either check your scallions for bugs or just simply rinse the diced up pieces of scallion and you'll get rid of any potential bug in that process. Raisins.
Do you want to break for questions at all, or?
We could do that. We can take a break for questions.
Okay, so what we'll do is like this. If you have a question, you can raise your hand on the Zoom, and then we'll unmute you. So if anyone has a question, there's a little function to raise your hand. If you go to participants, you can raise your hand that way. Or you can use the chat also. So AK has a question.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know, for the scallions, is it enough to just check the intersections, or do you also have to dice and cube it? Like, is it just based on the eye view to look at the intersection of the scallion at the bottom?
Yeah, so right now, what we would, if you're using a lot of scallions, let's say at an establishment, what we tell them to do is first check a few. Check the bulb area, check the tube. Just check a few to make sure we're not dealing with a more infested batch. Once we've determined that it's not a more infested batch and we have not found any bugs in the tube or the bulb or in the intersection, then we say it's not an infested batch, and then we'll rely on the fact that just removing the intersection would be enough to render the scallions a meat she'enei matzli. It wouldn't be common to find bugs in there. Yeah?
Okay, keep going, yeah?
If you're a consumer at home and you're only using one scallion, so we would want you to, to at least check more. Check the tube, check the tube area, check the bulb, check the intersection. Just check it to make sure that there are no bugs. Or again, you can just not bother checking, dice it up, put it into water with a little soap or a little veggie wash, agitate it for half a minute, 20 seconds, and then just pour it through a strainer, and then you'll just wash the soap, and all the bugs will come out with the soap.
Okay, there's someone named Mayor S. I'm going to unmute him. Mayor S, if you have a question.
Are we checking the soap water?
One more time?
Why are we checking soap water instead of checking clean water after, or putting it back into clean water afterwards and checking that?
Okay, so you're going back, not to scallions, you're going back to lettuce or anything else that you're referring to. Let's say lettuce before. So you're asking a very good question. We wash the lettuce. We use soapy water, because the soapy water helps get rid of the bugs. And so we're using soapy water when washing. But I did mention, as you noticed, that when you check the water, you should also have a little bit of soap in there. And the reason is as follows, is because we're not actually checking any leaves. We're only checking the water. Now, when I check the water, that's going to be a proof. We say that if I check the water that's on this cloth, then I know that there's a very good chance that there's no bugs left in the lettuce. Do I know for sure that there's no bugs left in the lettuce? I don't know for sure, because maybe, just maybe, no bugs came out onto the cloth, but there's still one bug left behind in the lettuce. But we say that's not common. Now, if I use plain water, we know plain water doesn't remove bugs as well as soapy water. So if I'm using plain water and no bugs came out in the plain water, is that as good as a proof that there's no bugs left in the lettuce than if I would have used soapy water? Meaning if I use soapy water and no bugs came out using soapy water, I say, wow, I used soapy, slippery water and not even one bug came out. That's a very good proof that there are no bugs left in the lettuce. But if I use just plain water is not as good as getting rid of bugs as soapy water. So my proof that there are no bugs left in the lettuce is not as good. And so therefore, by using soapy water, you're giving yourself a better proof that there are no bugs that are left in the lettuce. Additionally, you're going to have to wash the lettuce off one more time, which is just going to give you a further guarantee that indeed you have no bugs to be concerned about in the lettuce.
Okay, we got a question from Flinky.
Hi. Yeah, hi. I have a question regarding the vegetable strip. I'd like to know, where can I find it, please?
The strip cloth you're talking about?
That's right.
Cloth? Yeah, so you can call the CRC, and the CRC will send you one out.
Okay, a question from Reese. Reese. Anyone? Reese?
Yes, hi. A couple of questions, I hope quickly. There is something called miners that dig inside the vegetables or inside the leaves.
Yes, we're going to talk about that. It's coming up. Leaf miners are coming up.
Okay, and when you say that the scallions, do you just check a sample, or you have to mamish chop all the scallions you intend to eat? I wasn't clear.
So again, so we mentioned that if you're getting a large amount of scallions, let's say you're working at an establishment and you get a whole big bag of scallions, so then what we're going to do is two things. We're going to tell you check a sample, and the sample will tell us whether it's a more infested batch or a less infested batch. Once we determine that it's a less infested batch, so then we'll tell you it's sufficient to just cut off the intersections of all the scallions, and then we'll say that you're left with a miyat she'enei matzi of bugs, and you eat the scallions as is. However, if all you have is 1 or 2 scallions, so then we're going to tell you just got to check those 1 or 2 scallions from top to bottom.
All right.
Even if I cut off the junction, I still
Right.
have to chop the list.
Right. We still want to check, because if it's in a more infested batch, so then there will be bugs in the tubes or in the bulb as well.
All right. Ace Sputz at the JNet.
Yes, thank you. So I have 2 questions. One is about blueberries. I once heard in a different shir on Tolayim that they could have scales on them.
Yeah, that's coming. Yeah, very good. That's coming up next. We're going to talk about scales. We'll talk about different opinions about scales. We're going to show you pictures of scales. It's all coming soon.
Okay, Rabbi Yisroel Langer.
Yeah, I had a question about the soapy water for checking for leafy vegetables. Commonly, I have, when I use soap, it's maybe slippery or a little bit slippery on the leaf, but it still doesn't feel slippery on my fingers in the water. At what point is it enough soap? Because I end up putting up so much soap that it ends up being too much things.
So again, we don't have a set amount. It's just a feel. You have to just feel the leaf, agitate it a bit, and you'll feel the leaf when it gets slightly slippery. That will be enough.
Okay, so we're gonna hold off with questions right now. We'll have another question session later. I just want to remind everybody that we have on our website a guide which has a lot of people are asking about specific things like barley and leeks and things like that. So if we don't get to those specific produces here in this presentation, there is information on our website. We have a vegetable checking guide as well, and also www.askcrc.org. If you type in the vegetable, also gives you vegetable checking information. So if we don't address the specific thing you're asking about right now, we might get to it. But if we don't, there are more resources, and you can always email the CRC questions at info@crcweb.org. So we're going to continue on now with the presentation.
Okay, other things that we have looked into, raisins. You know, there are some communities that people don't eat raisins. They say they have bugs in them. You know, we have gone through many boxes of raisins, as well as some of the other friends from other certifications have gone through. We have not found anything significant in raisins to be of any kind of a concern. Now, of course, you have to go to a place that has a decent turnover. Like any of these foods, if you go to some supermarket, some store down the block, a corner store, where they have a very poor turnover, and it's been sitting there for a long time, so things like that could become infested. And there are reports like that where things get infested in that way. But if you go to a regular store that has a decent turnover, and the raisins haven't been sitting around in poor storage for long periods of time, so then the raisins should be fine. One of the things that we are currently right now researching are frozen strawberries. Now, regular strawberries, we'll talk a little bit about later, but regular strawberries do come very infested with thrips and baby thrips, and we have a procedure that gets rid of those bugs, or at least renders the strawberries into a miyat she'enei matzi, meaning after going through our procedure, we say that it's not common to find any more bugs left in the strawberry. However, frozen strawberries, they go through a very, or at least most of them, go through a very intensive washing process, where it's believed right now, we believe at the CRC that it's enough to make them into a miyat she'enei matzi. However, that's something that right now we are currently investigating. It's a very difficult thing to check, I will tell you, because you're taking these frozen strawberries, putting them into a bowl with soapy water, and it becomes mush. And then you have to check it on the cloth and really sift through all the mush to find the bugs. We have been finding bugs. It's not completely clean. We're going to go through this for a few months, meet together with our team of collectors, our checkers, and see what we come out to see if they are indeed miyat she'eni matzui like we believe today. So that's something that we are currently investigating in. Certainly frozen raspberries, frozen blackberries, that we have already gone through much research about and checking, and that we have discovered that those do have plenty of bugs. We do allow for frozen raspberries and frozen blackberries, we do allow for pureeing them. If you wanted to make a smoothie and you bought blackberries or raspberries in order to make a smoothie, so in that situation, the bug will definitely become crushed up. Now, a crushed up bug, we have to realize, you say that it's a bug, it's not kosher. Well, there's a concept called bitul bashishin. That means, let's say you have accidentally a drop of non-kosher food or a drop of milk falls into your cholent pot, and it gets mixed up with the rest of the cholent, the milk falls in. So if there's 60 times the quantity against the milk, so that would be okay to eat. Now, the reason why a bug, even though it's so small and minuscule, they say, hey, there's 60 times amount more than the bug. The answer is because a bug is whole. A bug is whole, and because it's whole, it has a certain chashivas and importance to it where it doesn't become nullified in the rest of the food surrounding it. But once we put those berries into the blender, and it's going to be thoroughly pureed in a way where every bug will become crushed or nicked or severed in some way, so that will kill out break apart the bugs. It will become. But I have tested this. Interestingly, I took bugs off strawberries and put them into water in a blender. Now, very interestingly, not all the bugs got crushed up. It just went for a whirlpool. They went swimming around in the blender, and I poured it onto the cloth, and they were walking around on the cloth. But then I repeated that experiment using ice cubes. I used some torque in there into the blender, and then not one bug came out after using that experiment. So as long as there's some torque in there, some solids inside there, that shouldn't be a problem. The bugs will get crushed up in that process. So frozen strawberries, certainly for pureeing purposes, are certainly going to be okay. Right now, we are just reevaluating our current position, whether they can be eaten whole. So for right now, CRC policy is that we do allow frozen strawberries to be eaten whole. Again, we're just going through an investigation on that currently. Now, one of the things that came out in the East Coast is quinoa. Quinoa on the East Coast. Now, sometimes you find bugs. We found this here in a local Costco. These were worms that were found inside. They're a little dried up. But these were worms that were found in some quinoa. But in the East Coast, they've been finding a lot of what's called book lice. Book lice, there's one. You can see how small it is. You can really easily make out that it's a bug, but you can see how small it is compared to the end of the toothpick. That's a toothpick that's pointing to it. So it certainly has the shape of the bug. We certainly feel that you could see it with your naked eye. It's something that can be seen. You don't need any magnification to see it, and that would be considered to be a bug. Now, in the East Coast, they were finding them. They're alive, crawling around. I went through here in Chicago, at least 60 bags, all different lot numbers, all different brands. I went to all the different supermarkets. I did find two of them to be infested, but again, 2 out of 60 brands, that's well below the miyat hamatzui level, and therefore we did not alert our community to this issue. Now, why over here in Chicago are they having, are we not finding any bugs, and other places they are? So that could be because of storage issues. Poor storage will lead to bugs, and therefore that can very well be that in some cities where it's coming from places of poor storage, they're finding bugs, other cities not. If you wanted to check your quinoa, let's say you live on the East Coast and you want to check for your quinoa, or let's say you want to be extra strict. You live here in Chicago, you just want to double check to make sure that there are no bugs in your quinoa. So the way to check for those book lice is that you would take a very fine mesh strainer, take the quinoa, and you would pour it into the strainer. You would then shake it back and forth over either a bug light or over a white plate. Shake it back and forth vigorously. What I like to do is actually take 2 of them and give it a real good shake. She spilled over there. And you check it, and then you look really, really close. But like I showed you, those bugs are small, but you look really close. I take my glasses off, and I look to see if I find any bugs. If no bugs are found, so then we know that your quinoa is good to go. If you start finding bugs, we would not recommend you sifting out all the bugs because not all the bugs will necessarily come out. You would just find yourself a different bag of quinoa to use and just get rid of that bag of quinoa. You have in brown rice on the East Coast also was having some issues. With brown rice, you can simply check it, you pour it onto a plate, and you finger it around, looking closely to see if there are bugs. Now, here's something that consumers could really be very helpful to hashkafos. I had a little friend of mine, Yehuda Cohen. He calls me one day that his mother found bugs in brown rice. He found all kinds of bugs in brown rice. So what do? We go ahead, we check at the store, and he's finding bugs in brown rice. Now, the reason why he was finding bugs is he was buying it from one of the kosher supermarkets, who actually their vendor was an East Coast vendor. And so therefore, their brown rice was coming from the East Coast, and they were having bugs in it. So immediately we alerted this to the kosher supermarkets that were getting their brown rice from the East Coast, who all had bugs in their rice. They immediately removed it from the shelf. But this is something which is very helpful information that somebody could really, by finding this information, call the CRC, call the local hashkacha, the certification, and alert them of this, and they really helping a lot of kids and saving them from eating bugs. I had somebody once, I was walking in the Beis Medrash, somebody sees me, people see me, they think bugs. That's what they think. They see me, they think bugs. So he tells me, his wife just took a bag of barley from Jewel, and he found some bugs in the bag of barley. So I immediately went to Jewel, took a few bags, and indeed they were all infested. Within some time, short amount of time, Jewel, not only that local Jewel, removed all that barley from the shelf, but the Jewels all around the entire country removed that barley from the shelf because one consumer notified me that there were bugs in barley. So this is a way that we could really, as consumers, really just help the entire, all the kosher consumers and help the entire system by reporting when we find bugs. Now, if you find bugs in your romaine lettuce, don't bother calling. We all know that there are bugs in romaine lettuce, but if you're going to find something in brown rice, in barley, in rice, or one of these grains, so it would be helpful for you to notify your local hashkacha, local certification of your find. Perhaps they can do something about it. One of the things that we have found, somebody reported to me about goji berries, that they found bugs in goji berries. And indeed, we started checking all over the different brands of goji berries. There's a bug right there found in the goji berry. And they were completely, totally infested. One bag, 8 bags had 10, 15 bugs. The reason is because those goji berries are coming from China. The Chinese over there, when they take their goji berries, they think they're eating some really very healthy food. But the way they actually dry them is they put them onto roads where people are going and are going by. Every time you get something from China, just think twice about it. It's not the same standards as they keep here in America. But they were filled and totally filled with bugs, and immediately we alerted the other hashkachas about it. They did their own checking, and we all had the same exact results. And all the hashkachas together then had to ban the use of goji berries. This is all things which are miyat hamatzli. Miyat hamatzli is things which are moderately infested. We mentioned 1 out of 10 servings will have bugs. We also check for certain things are going to have greater levels of infestation, which we call that muchzik b'tolam, something where most of the servings will have a bug in it. So it's not just 1 out of 10 servings or 2 out of 10 servings, but 6 out of 10 servings will be found with a bug. That's even a higher level of infestation. Here the rules become even more strict. Here the obligation to check is not just the Rabbanon, it's Minatorah. It's a biblical obligation to check the food in such a situation. Many of the organic lettuces, organic kale, organic romaine lettuce, a lot of the organic herbs will fall into that category. Organic has more bugs than regular produce, and the reason is because organic is not using the same amount of pesticides. And so therefore organic produce will have more bugs and it will be muhsik. And what does it mean to the consumer? So it means as follows. There are differences in halakha. When it comes to things that are in this category of highly infested, we won't allow you to thoroughly puree it. So for example, fresh blackberries. Fresh blackberries are something which is very, very infested. You can get small containers of raspberries, and they're very often going to be filled with bugs. They'll be filled with bugs. You wash it out in warm, soapy water, and you'll find lots of bugs will be pulled out from in the crevices of the blackberries. Because of that, CRC policy is not to allow using fresh blackberries or fresh raspberries in a smoothie kind of a setting. Right now our policy is we do allow the frozen ones. The frozen ones went through some sort of a washing process where it's believed that it's enough to reduce it to get in a combination with other factors. Rabbi Reese has ruled that one would be allowed to thoroughly puree the frozen blackberries and frozen raspberries. It wouldn't help you to take your fresh blackberries and just freeze them. It's because of the process that the blackberries have went through. That's why Rabbi Reese said he's the Av Bezin at the CRC, has allowed us to use those in a smoothie. Now, you'll notice sometimes that different hashgachas have different policies, and it becomes somewhat confusing for a consumer. This hashgacha says that we have to do that. This hashgacha says that. So just explaining it, sometimes the different rules that they set forth are based on their halachic guidelines. Meaning, we mentioned earlier that the CRC's policy is that if we find one bug in 10 servings, that's already called a miyat hamatzli. Another certification, another hashgacha may be more strict than that. And they may say that if you find one bug in 10 heads of lettuce, in 10 cartons of blueberries, that's already enough to make it a miyat hamatzli. So that could be one reason for different policies in checking the vegetable. But another one that's a really biggie is when it comes to the size of a bug. So that's a great debate. Let's say you find a bug which is very small. It's very small, and you need to have a magnifying glass to make out that it's a bug. Meaning you could see with your eyes a dot. You could see a dot. If you can't see anything with your eyes, and all you can see is with a microscope, then that's not a bug according to all opinions. But sometimes you could see something. I could see something. It looks like a little dot. I'm not sure. Is that a bug? It's a dot. Is it dirt? Oh, I take a magnifying glass. That's a bug. So is that considered to be a bug in halakha? This is a great debate. This is something that the poskim talk about, and it can have a very big impact in a lot of the produce that we eat. So let me just talk about one case in point. We just saw a picture of what was a baby strip. A baby strip is one that was debatable at the CRC. We had a lot of debate if that's considered to be something which is what we call nir leinayim. Could one make out that that's a bug? It looks like a little yellow line. There are no really wings on it unless you have a really, really good eyesight. You can't really make out any appendages. You see the ones to the right are enlarged. So maybe somebody with really, really good eyesight can make out some appendages, but for most of us, we'll see like a little yellow line. It's somewhat unique. It doesn't look like the regular piece of dirt. And this is something that at the CRC, we had all the rabbanim and the rabbis of the CRC, together with Rabbi Reese, sat and evaluated whether that should be considered to be a bug. And this really had great implications on our strawberry policy. Until a couple of years ago, the strawberry policy was simply to give a quick rinse to strawberries, and that was considered to be sufficient. However, these baby strips really tug away. There can be lots of them. One container can contain 25, 30 of them. They really hide away between the seed and the berry, and they're filled with, they can be filled with bugs. So should we consider them to be considered to be a bug? No. So the CRC policy is, we mentioned, it has to be something which is nir leinayim. You see it with your eyes. You don't need to use magnification. So if it moves, I know it's a bug. Dirt doesn't move on its own. I know it's a bug. And if it has appendages. But here it's a unique situation because it didn't look like the regular piece of dirt, but it doesn't have wings and legs. So the ruling was that Rabbi Reese ruled that based on everybody's looking at it and evaluating it, whether it really looked unique as a bug, that we made out that many of the baby thrips certainly would be problematic. Ones that were a little bit larger in size, those have to be able to be seen and to be gotten rid of before one eats the produce. Some of the littler ones, those were really not nearly naim, and then there were ones that were in between. It was hard to determine if they were considered nearly naim. But that was a big reason in our strawberry policy we had to get rid of those baby strips as well, and we had to come up with some sort of a very, very intensive policy. Basically, you could look at our guide. We tell you that the strawberries, you cut off the tops, you put them into very soapy water. Here we have a ratio. It's going to be at least 1 tablespoon of soap per 8 cups of water. We agitate it and leave it there soaking for a minute. Good agitation. Then we take each strawberry under running water, rubbing it, each one, and putting them into another 8 cups of water with a tablespoon of soap because we want to make sure to get rid of all those baby thrips. Another question comes up with the using of an insect called mites. Mites is something which is a very small insect. It's even smaller than that baby strip. It looks like a dot. It would appear, if you want to take a look at mites yourself, you take a leaf that you have in your backyard, and you can see sometimes there's a dot, like almost like a white little dot, that's streaking across the leaf, going up and down. Sometimes they're a little reddish in color. And here's a picture of myself showing to Rabbi Reese. That's Av Bezdin at the CRC. He's examining and looking at the mite that's crawling up and down the leaf to see if that mite, well, as long as it's moving, certainly we can't eat it because that's certainly, it's a bug. But let's say you see that, and when it's not moving, when it's dead, and it comes to you in that way, that's something which is nirale naim. Is that something that a average person would be able, with a little experience in bug checking, would be able to tell that that's considered to be a bug? And I really thought that maybe some of the really larger ones maybe could be considered to be nirale naim, maybe not. But this really comes up, we find different policies as, let's say, grapes. Grapes, when grapes are growing, so there are mites that are crawling up and down the vines and the grapes, and they can be filled with these mites. Then they're fumigated, and these mites sort of get caked on to those grapes. Now, at the CRC, our policy is that certainly after they're fumigated on the grapes, we don't see anything that looks like a bug on it, doesn't resemble a bug, and therefore our policy with grapes is simply to wash it, give it a rinse under running water. Any kind of other bug that's found over there will be removed in the process. However, if a hashgacha holds that a mite is a problem, these mites are problematic, so you'd have to have a much stronger method for the grapes. And in order to get rid of those mites, one would have to put those grapes into some sort of a soapy water with good agitation, at least once, maybe twice, to get rid of those mites. Again, that would be what other hashgachas may hold, and that's why you'll see some hashgachas will tell you have to use soap. At the CRC, we view those mites as that not nirale naim. It's not something which is readily recognized to the naked eye without magnification, and therefore we are not concerned for those mites. Another food where this would have a...
Do you want to pause for a few more questions, though?
Let me just finish this. Let me just finish mites, and then we'll pause for a question.
Okay.
Okay. So another issue would be when it comes to garlic. Garlic. Some people, when they take garlic, they just take the entire clove of garlic, all the cloves together, and they'll just put it into the oven, roast it, put it with some oil, and put it into their oven to cook. Now, we wouldn't recommend that either because we want you to look. We tell you to inspect the garlic. Sometimes it gets infested with crawling insects. Sometimes you'll find live mites. Sometimes you'll find thrips. You'll find other insects in it. So we do tell you to give at least to look around. But if you are concerned for mites, and even the ones that are not alive, so garlic is filled with them. And if so, certainly you would not be able to, according to those opinions, you would not be able to take your garlic and just use it. What you would have to do is you would have to peel the entire garlic, And after the garlic is completely peeled, the outer layer and the inner layers would be peeled. You would take it and rinse it under running water. They do slide right off. We've had consumers who called before they have seen a live mite. He said that they see their garlic is crawling around with little dots are crawling around on it. So that's not so common to find them alive on it. But in that situation, I said it's not a problem. These bugs fall right off with water. You don't need to use soap. All you need to do is rinse them under running water, and they wash right off. So again, so some certifications will tell you you got to wash your garlic before using. If you want to be extra strict, that's something that one could do. CRC policy is just to check to see if there's anything that you could see with your eyes that resembles a bug. And if that would be the case, then one should rinse it. Otherwise, we would allow you to eat it as is. The third one is a pineapple. A pineapple also has mites in it. Just to show you here, in the pineapple, when it's growing, these things are open. These leaves here are open, and mites are crawling up and down the pineapples. As the pineapple ripens, these leaves sort of close, and they trap the mites inside. Now the mites don't get deeper into the pineapple, but they do get. You can see those little holes, those little brown holes on the side of the pineapples. Those mites will get trapped alive in there. Again, CRC policy is not to be concerned for that because those mites you don't view as nearly nayim. But you might find other hashgachas will say that when you cut the pineapple, cut a thicker, make sure that the peel is cut off in a thick way. You're not leaving any holes behind. You're not going to be leaving any mites behind. If you wanted to be makbid for that, I have issues with using crushed pineapples. Crushed pineapple that comes in cans and things like that can have also mites in it. For that reason, some of the hashgachas replaced the pineapple juice. They replaced it with sugar water or corn syrup. Other hashgachas, what they did was, instead of using the juice from the outer part of the pineapple, they only used the juice from the center core. Interestingly, there was one hashgacha that changed their policy to only use the juice from the center core, and they checked then their 100 cans of their pineapple, and they found 3 mites in 100 cans. Now that's well below meat hamatzi level. That's like 1 in every 100 servings, and they're finding a teeny little mite, and that wasn't good enough for them. They discontinued their crushed pineapple thing. So there are all kinds of opinions. As you see, they can go from very, very strict, so it's really whatever the halakha requires. And, the CRC, we have our policies. We have a bezdin, and these are the policies that have been set forth, and that's based on what we tell our consumers. Okay, we can pause here for questions, and we're going to talk about leaf miners and scales, and that will be it. Okay.
Okay, so again, I'll ask people to raise their hands, and then we'll unmute them. All right, so we got Tag's iPad. Tag's iPad. You still there? Nope. Okay. All right. Yitzchak Gross. Yitzchak Gross.
Hi. Yeah, hi. I was just wondering if there's any other acceptable way for lettuce, besides with strip cloth. Are we still allowed to just agitate our lettuce and then rinse each piece? Is that still okay, or must be the strip cloth?
We had one extra step in there. This actually comes from Rav Moshe Vayi in Eretz Yisrael as well. If you, let's say you don't trust your eyesight, you don't have a strip cloth, so what we tell you to do is you take the lettuce, put it into soapy water, into a bowl of soapy water, and before you wash it off, we recommend taking a sponge. You put it on your counter, and just taking a sponge and very gently rubbing over both sides of the leaf. This way, even if it's a more infested batch, which has different bugs that are caked on, aphids, for example, really claw onto the lettuce, you're going to dislodge it. Then what you would do is take the leaf over to running water and wash off both sides very well. Just to skip the sponge stage, that we wouldn't recommend, because we have found that there have been bugs that are left on afterwards. We're not really, especially in the summertime, that might not be a miyat she'enei matzli left. It certainly does a good job of washing it, but we would recommend using the sponge in between. So it would be soapy water, taking a sponge, rubbing it up and down, and then rinsing both sides of the leaf under running water. After doing that, so then we would assume that whatever's, that you would get rid of all the bugs doing that way.
All right, Janice Minkowitz.
Hi. So when you're washing lettuce, if it's the third time that you're washing it and you see bugs, are you not allowed to use the lettuce anymore, or you just keep washing until you don't see bugs?
Okay, so that's a good question. The way we're doing it, we mentioned, is that we don't even bother checking it until you're on your third round. So if you check your third round and you're finding bugs, so you wash it a second time, you find even one bug, you got to rewash it. So you're going to rewash it, and then the fourth round you find bugs again. And then you do the fifth time, you find bugs again. So that means you washed the lettuce already 5 times, and you're still finding bugs. You say that's a very infested batch. We would recommend that you not use it, whether it's herbs, whether it's lettuce. If you feel that you need to use it, let's say that's what the lettuce you have, you're making a simcha, you need this lettuce, it's Erev Shabbos, you don't have time to get a different lettuce, what do? So what we tell you to do is to do 2 clean cloths in a row. So meaning, let's say you wash it, now if you did it 5 times and you found bugs, so wash it a 6th time, and if it comes out clean, so put the lettuce back into plain water, even without the soap, and then agitate it and pour that water into the cloth again. And if you're going to get 2 clean cloths in a row, so then we'll feel comfortable that it's probably okay. Meaning if it's something that's very infested to the point where you're getting bugs out already in round 5 of the washing, so we're concerned that just like bugs first waited till round 5 to come out, so they're really hanging on in there. So we wouldn't feel comfortable with 1 clean cloth. We want you to get 2 clean cloths.
Okay, Chana Dina.
Hi, yes. I'd like to know, going back to frozen berries, is that for ones that don't have a Kosher for using for smoothie?
Yes, that's correct. As long as there's no added kosher sensitive ingredients added to it, so that would be fine.
But anything, if we're talking about that, then that's enough to rely on. Anything that has
for thoroughly pureeing, correct? Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rabbi Doug.
Hi. So a couple of things. First of all, you didn't mention at all, for people who don't have the cloth right now and don't have the method to use the cloth, about washing off individual leaves by hand with soap, without soap, however it is. You didn't mention that process of actually cleaning each leaf of a romaine lettuce leaf by hand and then checking it up in the light. So that was one question. And the second question is, you didn't mention anything about pre-bagged lettuce with hashgacha and pre-bagged salad lettuce without hashgacha. So I wanted to bring those 2 points up for you to comment on.
Okay, so the first point that you commented on, you're right, I did not mention it in the lecture, but somebody just asked that question a few minutes ago, and we mentioned that idea of taking the soapy leaf, taking the sponge, rubbing the leaf up and down on the counter, and then rinsing it off under running water if you don't have a strip cloth. That's that point we just mentioned. And the other thing that you brought out, so regarding lettuce, so all lettuces, even iceberg lettuce, they have bugs in it. And we only would rely on using any kind of chopped up lettuce if it has a reliable certification, one that we're familiar with. Star K, OK, these certifications that are reliable. In those situations, they go through their due diligence to make sure that the washing process is sufficient in getting rid of it. There's checking that goes on there on top of the situation. If it has a certification that you're not familiar with, so then you want to do is call the CRC offices, to find out whether you could rely on that for lettuce.
Okay, we're going to go on again. So, and just to remind everybody that if you have any specific questions, you can always email the CRC at info@crcweb.org. We have a lot of information on our website as well. There's also actually a video of Rabbi Langer checking lettuce in someone's kitchen that's recorded. You can actually see him doing it there. And also, the video hopefully will be posted. This recording will hopefully be posted on our website sometime tomorrow. So in case your friends are asking you about it, you'll be able to review it and then there as well. So now we're going to continue on with the presentation.
Okay, so the question was brought up before with leaf miners. Leaf miners is a bug that actually burrows its way inside the layer of leaf. So it's not something that you could wash off. Here's a situation where you have leaf miners on snow peas. Now, we don't make consumers look for leaf miners on snow peas, but it happened to be that a mashgiach from a local establishment called up and he said he's finding all these swirly lines on it. As you can see, the lines are all swirling. Now what happens is there's a little small insect. It starts out as a worm, and it's burrowing its way inside the layer of leaf. It's not inside. It's inside that layer of leaf of the peel, inside the peel of the snow pea, as burrowing its way around. Now sometimes when they reach maturity, this leaf miner will pop out. It's going to turn into a fly, into an insect, and it flies away, and all you left with is a trail. If all you left with is a trail, that's really fine and nice. You don't have to be concerned. But what happens is sometimes the bug is still remaining behind in the snow pea. So we would recommend that if you happen, we don't tell you to check your snow peas for leaf miners, but if you happen to notice in a sugar snap pea or a snow pea, you find a swirly line like that, that's something which may have a leaf miner in it, and we would recommend you not using it. Now, don't get carried away, because if you look over here, you see these are also snow peas, and you see white lines on it, but that's not a swirly line that goes all around. It's just bruised snow peas, but there are no bugs in those snow peas. So, but if it has a line like it looks like a maze going swirling in and out, that's a sign of a leaf miner. We do tell people to check leaf miners in scallions. In the tubes of a scallion, we do find leaf miners, depending on the time of the year. Going through the winter, I really didn't find too many of them, but you can see there's that white line that swirls. It starts off very narrow. As it goes further down, it gets a little bit wider and wider. Sometimes they leave, and sometimes you look at the end of at the very end of it, and you'll see like it's a little yellowish, a little brownish, a little blackish, where the worm is still inside. And very often they're alive. You can poke it out with a toothpick. The worm will come out, and that's the worm. Now, I'll tell you that last summer I was at at a jewel, and everything was just completely infested with leaf miners. So it's something which is easy to check for. You just keep your eyes open. You see if you see any of those white swirly lines. That's a sign of a leaf miner. You could find it on anything. You could find one on celery. You could find it on lettuce and spinach. We don't think that they're really considered matzoi on other things, so we don't require you to check every leaf for it, but you keep your eyes open if you happen to see it. So that's something that you would want to get rid of. Okay, the last topic we'll just discuss is the scale insect. A scale insect is an insect which is a very, very, very small insect. You find it on citrus fruits. Here you find them on Tunisian dates. You'll have it. It's a little circle. It has almost like a little mump in the middle of that circle where it's raised. It's a very, very small insect. It crawls onto the citrus fruit, onto this Tunisian date. It will appear on avocados. You see them on grapefruit sometimes, and you see them on blueberries, which we'll show you in a moment. They're very, very small, and what happens is it latches onto the fruit. And it's not, in the Flies Habari, the unbelievable thing that it doesn't, it now for the rest of its life is going to suck the fruit that it latches onto. So, for example, here, these are blueberry scales. It's a very small bug. It comes to the blueberry, it latches onto it, and it just sucks blueberry juice for the rest of its life, and it just sheds all its appendages. It doesn't need to crawl anymore. It doesn't need to walk. It doesn't need to fly. And so it just sheds all its appendages, and all it looks like is a little piece of dirt. Now, what you're seeing over there in that circle is the scale. That's the wax that it spits out, that it protects itself with. It doesn't crawl. It doesn't move. It just spits out a wax that it protects itself with. Now, if you turn that scale upside down, you're going to say, well, I don't see a bug over here. All I see is some dirt. There's only dirt over here. Well, there's going to be a bug in it. There's actually a female scale and a male scale. The female scales are always going to be there. Those are they're exact circles. Exact circles. That's going to be a female scale. Then you have scales that are not exact circles. Those are going to be the male scale. The male scale is sometimes there, sometimes not there, but the ones that are circular, the female is always going to be there. Here's a situation where that's where the scale is upside down. It's removed off the berry actually on the strip cloth, where you have that yellowish on the underside as part of the process of the scale. But that was a piece of the scale that you see, that yellowish over there. What's the halacha of a scale? So now a scale is something that the question is that called nirelei naim. I know there's a bug there because it left behind a piece of wax over there, but I look at it, I don't see a bug. There's nothing here. You got to be a scientist to figure out that thing is a bug. So is that considered to be a bug al pi halacha? So again, this is something which is very much debatable. Rishon Zaman Orbach originally held that it shouldn't be considered to be a bug. After we found out that the Chazon Ish held that it was considered a bug, so he retracted. Rabbi Yisroel Langer felt that it shouldn't be considered a bug. It's not called nirelei naim. This is something which is very much debatable about. So the CRC policy right now is that we don't view the scale bug to be considered to be an insect, and therefore it doesn't concern us. If you wanted to be strict, or you follow other guidelines of others who hold that one should be strict about it, so it would come into play. I mentioned by Tunisian dates, as we saw before. When it comes to citrus fruits, if you want to use it for a zest, you want to use the lemon peel, the orange peel, so you would have to actually scrape it off. You'd have to scrape it off. My son just showed me on Shabbos in one of the magazines. They had in an article they were showing they have special brushes to remove scales off the peel of citrus fruits. So that's what one would have to do. It's a little circle. We see that there was a little mump in the middle. Blueberries, so there are some who won't eat blueberries because they're concerned for the scales. They're very hard to check. Sometimes in a blueberry, the scales, they like to go under the crown area. It's shady over there, and they'll make their home over there, and they're all over. Usually when the scales are present, they get onto everything. They get onto a lot of it. If a person wanted to be strict about scales, so they could sort of really make a compromise. They can really just take a handful from a container and start checking very carefully all over the blueberries of that handful if there are scales. If they don't see any scales, so they could say that there's probably no scales left in the container. Will the scales come off in water? Not all of them do. That one that I showed you in the picture a moment before, that one did come off. If you agitate it very strongly in soapy water, so some of them will slide off. So there is a way to check it on the strip cloth if there's a presence of any scales. So some will come off. But if you find them and you're going to be strict about it, then you won't be able to eat the others, because you can't assume that they all came off because they're really stuck on very tight. You would need to take a toothpick really to slide it off. Now people confuse it. Some people see every like a little blemish on a blueberry, and they think that's going to be a scale. That's not the case. Sometimes blueberries have little things sticking out of it. If you take a toothpick and you try to poke it off and it doesn't come off, it's not a scale. It's something which is just a blemish, part of the blueberry. Sometimes you'll see a little white mold on a blueberry. That's not a scale either. The scales are very unique. They're not, you're not going to find every batch is going to have them, but here and there you will find batches of blueberries that will have scales. Are they a mir hamatzi or not mir hamatzi? I really can't tell you. The CRC does not view them to be an insect, so it's not really a concern of mine to know how matzi they are, but I do see them from time to time, especially the organic ones or U-pick farms, and those, you'll see them, those will be flooded with scales. Okay, we'll stop over here for question, and that's really the end of the presentation.
Okay, Shira Berman. Shira Berman?
Yeah, I was wondering about chopped romaine lettuce that has a certification on it. Do you need to wash it the regular strip cloth way, or is it okay the way it is?
Right, so it really depends on the certification. If it has a certification, let's say positive, Bodek, one of the certifications that we would rely on, Star K, we mentioned in some areas they have the Star K. So those are certifications that we would rely on for romaine lettuce, and that would be okay to use as is. However, if it's a certification that you are not familiar with, So then it would be advisable to call the CRC offices to know whether you could rely on that certification for romaine lettuce.
Okay, Yitzchak Gross. Yitzchak Gross. There? Yitzchak Gross? Going once, going twice. Okay, we have Reese again. Dot Reese. No? Okay, Ayelet Rosen.
Hold on.
Ayelet Rosen.
Hello, you hear me?
Hold on. Okay, so Mr. Reese piped in, so we'll go with him, Mr. Reese first.
Okay, thank you. Two quick questions. Number one, do you know the size of the microns of that cloth?
I don't have it on me right now. Rabbi Ronan, do you happen to know offhand the size?
I do not know.
No.
I can get that from the CRC. They'll know.
Right. I believe it's 50, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. And if I want to make just put a piece of lettuce on a sandwich, instead of going through a 20-minute process, if I just cut near the stem and rub that with a shmata or something, it's not something, because most of the problem I understand is with the pockets, because lettuce has so many pockets and it's not smooth. But if I go to the stems only and I cut the stem area and wipe that off so there's nothing on the surface left.
Right, so then you see, right, if it's visibly obvious, right, you can do that with the stalk. If all you're using are the stalks and you just wash it off, well, it's like a piece of celery. A piece of celery has bugs on it, but it's a slippery, hard surface and all the bugs will slide right off. So if you're just using like the stalk area, it might be helpful to use some soap if it's a little dirty and buggy, but the things should slide right off, correct?
All right, so Ayelet Rosen, thank you for waiting.
Hi, thank you. I have two questions. First question is regarding triple washed spinach. We learned that if it's triple washed, you can just check it on top of the light without washing it. That's my first question. Is this correct, or we still need to wash it with soapy water?
So, yeah. You had a second question?
Yeah, the second question is that we learned that regarding frozen broccoli, you check it, if you buy the same brand 3 times and you don't find anything in the water, then that would be a chazaka not to check it anymore, assuming that it's the same brand.
Okay, so let's deal with the first question first. So a triple wash baby spinach, so it all depends. Sometimes you get, the triple washing was enough and you got a good batch and you're not going to find anything. And sometimes triple washed baby spinach, you're going to find, we have found high levels of infestation in it. You can always check all the leaves. I mean, that's very time consuming to check all the leaves of the baby spinach. I mean, nobody's going to stop you from doing that. If you take each leaf to a bug light and you look on both sides of the leaf and examine it and scrutinize every spot of it to make sure that there are no bugs, spiders, or anything like that, that'd certainly be okay. But to just rely on checking a few leaves of the triple wash baby spinach, that we would not rely on based on our experience. Again, and the second question you had was
the same brand of broccoli.
Yeah, broccoli. So broccoli, it depends on the batch, because if you have one company that one time served broccoli that was not so infested, now the next time it can come from a different lot, and this one is more infested. Broccoli in general, the CRC does not recommend using it without a reliable certification. I could tell you that I've had people send me from other locations, from other cities. They would send me their broccoli from other places. They wanted me to check it right over here in our CRC laboratory. And we checked it and we found they thought it was clean and they were selling it to kosher consumers as clean broccoli. And we found literally in bags 6, 7, 8 bugs in a bag. Broccoli, the bugs really get stuck in the florets. And if you get a more infested batch, it's not going to come out so easily. Therefore, we don't recommend checking it. I mean, there are those who will say if you soak it into warm water for long periods of time to open up the pores. But some of the broccoli is really so infested, and they're really stuck into those pores. They're hard to check also on the cloth, because not only are the bugs coming on the cloth, you're getting other little pieces of the florets onto the cloth with it, which makes it even harder to check. So unless you really have a great expertise in it, we really wouldn't recommend using fresh broccoli.
All right, Shana Rabinowitz. Shana Rabinowitz. Oh, there you go. Sorry. No?
What about kale? How do we do kale?
So kale, again, is also, I know it's really healthy for you, but kale is one of the things that comes infested. Organic kale that's the worst from everything. But even kale comes with these little green bugs very often, especially in the spring and summertime. The way to do it, if you know what you're doing, and how to check, so you do the strip cloth method for it. We would advise putting a little extra soap in there just to, because these aphids really stick onto the lettuce. So they could be checked using the strip cloth, and we do allow our establishments to use it. But I will tell you that a lot of our establishments choose not to use it because it's so difficult to check because they're filled with so many bugs.
Okay. Uriel Nashoffer. Unmute. There you go. Uriel Nashoffer.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify on the non-strip cloth method for cleaning the lettuce with the sponge. So do you have to do the 3 times wash before you do the sponge, or you just do one
No,
wash?
just one. Put it into good soapy water, enough to make the leaf slippery. Take a sponge, just gently over the counter. You don't want to destroy your leaf. It's gently over the counter, rub gently all over both sides of the leaf, and take the leaf under running water, and everything comes off.
And are you talking about the abrasive side of the sponge, or like the spongy part of the sponge?
The spongy part. I will mention that it works better actually on whole leaves rather than hearts, meaning usually when you're using the strip cloth method, we will tell you to use the hearts. Hearts have less bugs than whole leaves, but in the situation where you're using the sponge method, all the bugs are coming off anyway, and the whole leaves will lay nicer on the counter. They'll lay flat on the counter. It'll be easier to use.
I'll do one more question. We'll go with Tali.
Hi. So there's actually a separate type of berry called barberries. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I was wondering if you know what we can do with that. It's like a dry type of a berry that we use to fry and put into rice. It's like a raisin. I don't know if you heard of it.
What's it called?
It's called a barberry, B-A-R, and then berry.
A barberry?
Yeah, barberries.
Barberries. I'm not familiar with it. If you email us at the CRC, we could look into it for you. But offhand, I'm not familiar with the barberry. You're using it in a smoothie?
Oh, wait.
We use it to eat with rice. We usually fry it with like a bit of rose water and put it with rice.
So I'm not familiar with the berry. But again, if you email us at the CRC, we could look into it for you and find out if we can get any information about it.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Again, just to remind everybody that that if you have any questions or further questions about specific, am I still there? Am I frozen?
You're still there. You're there.
Okay, good. Just to remind everybody that if you have specific questions, a lot of vegetables specifically are listed on our website called Ask CRC. Besides, there are a lot of other great kosher information. If you type in the vegetable you're looking for, it will give you a quick recommendation on how to wash them. We also have the full checking guide on our website at www.crcweb.org. If anyone has any other questions, you could email us questions as well at info@crcweb.org. That's going to go to me, and any of the vegetable questions that are more complicated that I can answer, Rabbi Langer gets them, and he promptly gets to answer them. So that is the resources that are available. Again, we thank everyone for participating, and hopefully we'll be able to eat our healthy foods a lot more cleanly and more halakhically approved after this presentation. Any last words, Rabbi Langer?
No, we're good. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Okay.